All right, pre-algebra students, in today's video, we are going to be solving equations with decimal coefficients. Previously, we talked about how we can use the least common multiple to multiply fractions by to simplify solving equations in that process. Today, we're going to use powers of 10 to aid in solving multi-step equations. So we'll talk about how decimals and powers of 10 are related, and then we're going to practice solving clearing decimals and making it an easier process for us. So make sure you have your guided notes out and let's get started. So first, we need to know that we can clear decimals by multiplying them by powers of 10. So I just have an example decimal here. You've got 2.581436. So we know that this 2 is in the ones place. And the 5 after the decimal, that's where we start getting into, this would be our tenths place. The 8 would be in the hundredths place. 1 is going to be in the thousands place. And the 4 is going to be in the 10,000s place, and so on. You get the idea. We're basically adding a 0 or a place value every time we move the decimal over 1. So in order to clear decimals, we need to know the place value of the decimal, how far out it passes the decimal point, and then we can multiply it by a power of 10, like tens, hundreds, thousands, 10,000s, to clear the decimal by moving the decimal point over to the right. So let's just try clearing these decimals that we see here. 0.45, the last decimal place, that's in the hundredths place. This is hundredths. So in order to clear this decimal or make it a whole number, we're going to have to move the decimal 2 places to the right. And to do that, we're going to multiply it by 100. So if we multiply this decimal by 100, that's going to move the decimal 2 places to the right, and what we'll get is 45. So basically decimal went from the left side, moved 2 places over, our number is 45. So that decimal now has been cleared. Let's try a couple more. 3.2. The decimal, or the number after the decimal point, that's in the tenths place. The first place is the tenths place. And so we would need to multiply this decimal by 10. So tenths, tens, they correlate or they match with each other. So if we multiply this number by 10, that means we're moving the decimal over 1 place. So we would move here, and 3.2 times 10 would be 32. That decimal has been cleared. It's over on the right side of the number now. Another one, negative 2.589. The last place value that we see here, that's the thousandths place. And so the power of 10 that matches that would be 1,000. Or 10 to the third power. We have to move the decimal 3 places over, so that means we have to multiply by 10 to the power of 3, which is 1,000. So if we do that, we move the decimal 3 places over, and our new number, negative 2.589 times 1,000, is going to be negative 2,589. So now the decimal's on the right side. Last one, 18.6. This decimal here, that's in the tenths place, and we know what that means. We need to multiply this decimal by 10. So the decimal is going to move to the right 1 place, and we get 186. So we can use this concept of clearing decimals to make solving equations easier, so we don't have to add and subtract a bunch of decimals all the time and possibly make an error when we're adding and subtracting, possibly multiplying and dividing. So let's try that out. So in an equation with decimal coefficients like this one, 0.2r plus 0.75 is equal to 0.5r. First, what we need to do is we need to figure out the decimal in the equation with the longest place value. Basically, it's the decimal with most digits to the right of the decimal point. So in this equation here, 0.2r, that's in the tenths place. 0.75, that's in the hundredths place. And 0.5r, again, that's in the tenths place. So we're going to have to look at 0.75 here. This is the decimal that has the most digits to the right of the decimal point. And since this is in the hundredths place, we're going to multiply the entire equation by the matching power of 10. And we're going to move the decimals to the right the same number of places to create numbers without decimals. So since our longest decimal place would be the hundredths, we'll multiply every single number in this equation by 100. So 100 times 0.2r, 100 times 0.75, and 100 times 0.5r. So if we think about it, we're moving all of the decimal places 2 to the right. So 0.2 would become 20. 0.75 would become 75. And 0.5 would become 50. So I'm going to rewrite this equation with those updated numbers, all the ones that I multiplied by 100. So we have 20r plus 75 is equal to 50r. So this equation in blue here is the exact same equation as the original. The only thing we did was just make it easier to solve. So from here, when we solve this equation, notice we have variables on the left and the right sides. We need to collect them to one side of the equation. So in this case, I'd like to move the 20r over to collect with the 50r on the right side. To do that, I'm going to subtract 20r from both sides of the equation. I'm left with 75 is equal to 50r minus 20r, which is 30r. And to solve this equation for r, we're going to do the opposite of multiplying r by 30, which is divide by 30. And 75 divided by 30 is going to give us 2.5. So r is equal to 2.5. So a much simpler process than before. Let's try another one. This one, I'm going to have to do a little bit more work. So I have 4.69 minus 6.8v minus 1.87 is equal to negative 9.8v minus 8.58. So before I add or subtract or combine like terms here, I'm going to have to combine like terms. I do want to multiply the entire equation by a power of 10 to clear those decimals. It's just going to make it easier to combine like terms for me. So let's take a look at our place values. For this equation, 4.69, that decimal is in the hundredths place. Negative 6.8v, that's in the tenths place. So I'm still looking at hundredths place being the longest decimal. Negative 1.87 is in the hundredths place. Negative 9.8, that's in the tenths place. And negative 8.58 is in the hundredths place. So the longest place value would be hundredths, which means I'm going to multiply the entire equation by 100 yet again. And when we multiply decimals by 100, all we're doing is moving the decimal place 2 to the right. So 2 to the right for every single one, multiplying by 100. Okay, so when I multiply this out, every single one, 100 times 4.69 is going to be 469. Negative 6.8v times 100 is going to be negative 680v. I had to add a 0 to this one because it only went out to the tens place. 100 times negative 1.87 is negative 187. Negative 9.8v is negative 980v. And negative 8.58 times 100, that's negative 858. Okay, from here, I feel much more confident about combining like terms. On the left side of the equation, I see that I have two constants that I can combine. I'm just going to subtract left to right. 469 minus 680, or 469 minus 187. 469 minus 187, that's going to be 282. So 282 minus 680v is equal to negative 980v minus 858. From here, I get to choose whether I want my constants to end up on the left side of the equation or the right side. I'm going to choose to put the variables on the left side of the equation. So variables will end up here, constants will end up over here. So if that's the case, I'm going to move my variable that's on the right side of the equation, negative 980v, and collect it with negative 680v. To move negative 980v, I'm going to add the opposite of that number, or of that variable. I'm going to add 980v to both sides of the equation into the variable. This is canceled. We now have 282, and then negative 680v plus 980v is going to be positive 300v. And that's all equal to negative 858. From here, my constant that's on the left side of the equation, 282, that needs to collect with negative 858. To do that, I'm going to subtract 282. 282 minus 282 equals 0. And do the same thing on the other side of the equation. We're left with 300v is equal to negative 858 minus 282. That's going to be a larger negative number. So basically we're combining these. And the sum, or the difference, is going to be negative 1,140. And if I divide both sides by 300, we know that a negative number divided by a positive number will be a negative number. I'm going to write my answer off to the side here. V is going to equal 1,140 divided by 300. And my answer is negative 3.8. So that's going to be my answer. And that was a little bit trickier of an equation, but as long as we know to distribute that power of 10 and then combine like terms afterward, we should be good to go. For additional practice, try out problems 2 through 5. So that is it for solving equations with decimal coefficients. I hope that was helpful to you. Make sure you try out the additional practice problems and check your answers with my filled in notes afterward. Ask for support if you need it, and I hope you have an awesome day.